Last year alone, there was $4.8 billion spent on OnlyFans. That's insane. $4.8 billion was spent mostly by men, largely within North America, on OnlyFans. So this is like having a virtual girlfriend where you never get BJs, you never have sex, you don't go out on dates, you're just sent content, right? You just sent videos and photos, and maybe you get to chat once in a while. I think this is how it works. But there's this huge disconnect. So I wanted to talk about what's happening based on looking at the data, and I really want to get your perspectives. If you're a young man that's out there that's, watching porn or has quit porn, I would love to hear your perspective. Or, even if you're in your 50s and 60s and you're watching this and you're like, this is something that I have dealt with. I've now been doing the work that I've been doing for a decade, and I've worked with thousands of dudes that have, had varying degrees of relationships with pornography, right? Using it once in a while to using it every single day and having a very real addictive behavior pattern with it, a very real addiction to pornography, which I don't think it's talked about enough. I do think that there are more men out there that have varying degrees of addictions to pornography that just aren't getting talked about, especially young men. I see a lot of men coming in. You guys message me sometimes on Instagram or, email me and say like, hey, how do I deal with this? And, what do you recommend? And so one of the big questions is, why is this happening? Well, the main piece that I've seen ties into isolation. So a couple of things are sort of diverging into one experience, with this hentai. The main thing that I see is that when you have a rising population of young men, right? 66% of young men between 18 and 29 aren't in a relationship. 50% of those young men aren't looking for a relationship. And then 27%, it's like 1/3 of men between that same age bracket of 18 to 29 haven't been sexually active in over a year. So if you extrapolate that data out, that is a lot of young men who are, experiencing a tremendous amount of sexual arousal and sexual energy. Like I remember what it was like to be an 18 and 19-year-old man. And I mean, the amount of sexual energy and ferocity and capacity that I had was insane. And so I think that there's a ton of young men that are out there and they're not in a relationship. They're not looking to date. A lot of these men haven't been sexually active. Maybe, they went onto dating apps, and, dating apps are definitely not set in men's favor, especially the sort of like bottom 50% of men. So maybe they went onto dating apps and sort of struck out, but then they found OnlyFans and they found Pornhub and they found pornography. And the interesting thing is that it cures a lot of what I think a lot of young men are experiencing, and a lot of men in general are experiencing, which is a sense of isolation, specifically from women, specifically from any kind of sexual expression and exploration. And so I think a lot of these young men who, maybe went onto dating apps and have tried to go, pick up women in public, and maybe you guys have experienced this. After striking out, for a certain period of time, or maybe you meet a couple women who are just like, this is not worth my time, have just sort of turned to, well, I feel maybe a little lonely. I feel like this isn't working or it's not worthwhile. And so it's just easier for me to go and pay to get my quote unquote needs met. It's just easier for me to have a kind of like a virtual girlfriend, girl next door type of vibe, because that's what a lot of these women on OnlyFans are, right? It's different. I think it's different between porn. Porn is sort of the women in there are sort of like these very sensationalized, extreme versions of women. And then from a lot of the research that I could, glean and some of the men that I've talked to who have used OnlyFans, I personally never have, just legitimately. It wasn't around when I was watching porn. And so, I think I don't know if I would say that I got lucky. But from a lot of the men that I've talked to who have used OnlyFans, the vibe is that a lot of the women are kind of like the girls next door. It's women that these men could project on to these women of like, I could see myself being with you in real life, or I'd really like to be with you in real life. And so it creates this kind of like, I think the term is girlfriend experience, where a lot of these men, whatever their age are, and guys, again, I want you to tell me if what I'm saying resonates with you. You know, does this feel true for you and what you've seen with your buddies and your friends and your et cetera? But I think for a lot of these guys, it's like, well, dating sucks and the dating pool isn't great and dating apps are terrible and I'm striking out. And so I'll just pay to have my fantasies met, my sexual desires met. And I'll just pay to have a kind of like girlfriend experience where I'm telling this woman what I want and what I want her to say to me and, you know, what I want to hear from her. And that'll sort of suffice in the interim. Now, I think that there's other factors at play, but I think this is the real big one, that we've sort of created this social experiment en masse, specifically with young men. And I think that it's so damaging and so dangerous. And so for a lot of guys that are out there, you know, my personal take on this is cut porn out of your life, cut these things out of your life for a period of time and see what it's like. You know, how much energy do you free up that goes into working out or a creative endeavor like art, or woodworking or Brazilian jiu-jitsu or your business or your career or whatever it is. So I usually try and advocate for guys to like cut this out of your life for a period of time to see what happens, you know, to notice what it feels like. Because ultimately, as men, what we really want in life is choice. We really want a deep sense of choice. And for a lot of guys, they feel specifically within dating, specifically when it comes to being in a relationship with women, that we've entered into this space where there's not a lot of choice or there's no choice at all. It's like who I want to be with, you know, how I want dating to look. I just don't have any say in that whatsoever. I go into the dating apps, I'm getting rejected constantly. I approach women in person, you know, maybe they're just not who I would want to be with in the first place, or they're rejecting me. And I don't feel like I have a choice. And so this is like the only choice that I'm left with, is to go and watch porn or to pay an OnlyFans, you know, woman to, you know, to explore with.